I'm going to get started because I don't want to waste any of your time. And I know there's an end to this, and so the earlier I start, the more we get in. But I've got a little outline, and every one of you should have this on your, somewhere in your folder there. And the first thing I'm going to do, if you look across the top of it, is who I am. Who's Paul Moyer? Well, Paul Moyer is a preacher's kid first, so you should know that. That's why I have a real love for the seminary and people that are trying to become pastors. I grew up in Appalachia, Ohio. I didn't know that I was even under the poverty line until after I graduated from high school, and then I figured out, wow, we didn't have any money. It made going to college sort of cheap, though. You know that? Back then, I think my student loan was $800 when I graduated.
They didn't have these.
Oh, they didn't have them. Okay. So I was a banker. I went to Ohio Northern University. I went to Franklin University in Columbus because I wanted to go to school at night and become a banker. So at age 20, I started working for the Ohio National Bank downtown. I really liked that world. Then I got married, and my wife was from Paulding County, so we moved up here. What a change. I did get an MBA at Xavier University while I was down there, so I am sort of overeducated. And then I have 3 other MBA equivalent degrees from the American College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, that have to do with financial planning, retirement planning, and, are you ready for this? I'm a chartered advisor for senior living. No one in here is ready for that, though. What I do, I own a company that's in its 18th year right now. It's called Moyer Financial Services. I'm affiliated with New York Life Insurance Company. I'm self-employed. I'm not an employee, but I sell their products. I chose them because they are the oldest life insurance company in the United States. They paid death benefit to George Custer and 6 of his men. So that sort of gives you some perspective on how old the company is. It's never failed to pay a dividend in 165 years, I think, of being around. So it really is a good company. I work a lot in the retirement market. I do a lot of estate planning, and in Findlay there's plenty of that. But the other side that you need to know, I do manage money too. I manage about $90 million in assets for people. But what you need to know is about 1/3 of my practice, I don't get paid for it all. And 1/3 of my practice is what I feel God has called me to, and that is to help people learn. And they have to learn to not make the mistakes that they're making. Usually by the time they come to me, they are so deep in debt, or I've had, for example, a 24-year-old young couple come to me that we sat down to try to figure out how to get them out of the situation they were in because they owed about $40,000 in credit card debt. And they did it because they wanted to have that big wedding, and their parents couldn't afford it. I don't know that my wedding even cost $1,000. So we went through gathering all the information so we could start to solve that problem, or at least give them a track to run on, and then they told me that they had another $80,000 in student loans. And what do you know about student loans? You can't extinguish that debt in a bankruptcy. So if you file bankruptcy, you still owe the student loans. You can't get out of those. Everything else you could extinguish. Is that a direction to go? No. So the thing that I'm here today is to help you start to think about the basics. To try and help you understand that there's things that you can do to stay out of those problems. That can take a lot of pressure off of you, because when people get into those situations, they are under a lot of stress. And when you're under a lot of stress, you don't make good decisions. And if you don't know exactly where you are in that part of your thinking and in that part of your life, you're going to be a target. And you'll make worse decisions. So why I do this is I just believe in helping people. So now I'm going to get into the talk. Because I'm here to, I came here to talk to students. My target was the young person, or maybe the old person, studying to be a pastor. Oh, how scary is that? I mean, they come in and I've met them, I've talked to them, I know some of them come in and talk to me today even. They graduated from here. And they're excited about the Lord, and they're excited about teaching. They're excited about making a difference in someone's life or helping that person discover God. And, what a thrill that is. However, that industry doesn't always pay a lot. Those people don't get a special card when they go to the grocery store, so they don't have to pay anything. I mean, there's things that they go through, especially when they're raising families, that they have to learn to be prepared for. But believe it or not, they're not unique. There are a lot of people out there. And today, it's getting worse as time goes on because so many people are out of work now. So many people did not do a good job of planning or saving. And now that they're out of work and they're used to spending their entire paycheck, they might be in a worse situation than the young person or the old person trying to become a pastor. Why might they be in worse situations? Because when they were earning a salary or earning an hourly wage and doing quite well before the cutbacks or before the pressure, the down push on incomes, that they have bought a house and they have a mortgage and they have debt. Debt is a crippler. Debt can be planned, and as long as you respect debt, you can handle debt. But before you go out to do something, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people like me that are willing to sit down and say, let's figure out how much you can afford. I don't think, I mean, how many of you go to an Allen Edmonds shoe store to buy shoes? Does anybody ever go into an Allen Edmonds shoe store? Well, they start at about $250 to $300 a pair. Haven't been there, have you? But there's people that to them, that's important because of the group that they run with might be able to do that. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is you can be friends with a lot of people, and I have friends that are very wealthy and I have friends that are very poor. But I certainly don't direct my buying habits or my eating habits or anything around the way those people go. Because they can do, I can get hurt by trying to emulate those people. I guess as you look on this outline, you'll see that I'm ready to address the young single student, the second career married family man. You ever get any of those? Or woman? Or a retired person who's answering the call to ministry. That's who I came prepared for. So if there's any of those in here and you have questions, you don't have to wait till the end of this. You can fire them or write them on the card because I want to make sure that you get that attention. But the first thing that you need to do, and if you haven't done it yet, you can take that little notebook that you have today, and you need to start writing down what your goals are. And you have several kinds of goals. Some are short-term, some are within a year or 2 years, and some of them are long-term. So, and I'm bringing this up because what your goals are, what your priorities are, what your needs are so important. So you need to sit down, and I'm sure all of you know what you spend if you've taken the time to write it down at the end of a week. I see iPhones, I see cell phones around. I think there's things in mine that says list, and I'll put in there what it was and how much it adds up to, and then I'll keep track of that because I want to know that. Do I have to worry about that today? No, I've been blessed that I probably don't have to worry about it, but it was the way I was raised, and it's the only way that I go to sleep at night because I know exactly where I'm at. The last thing on here you're going to see doesn't just apply to pastors, since all of you aren't pastors. But you and your spouse need to be on the same page in everything. And you know, it's pretty easy to get off that page because we're busy. We're running here, we're running there, we're taking care of kids, and the pastor is many times called out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then there's just never that time to sit down and look each other in the eye and ask, how are you really doing? And what can we do? That's when you have to sit down and start to communicate about the budget. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about these budgets, okay? Because I think it's important that you at least get these basic ideas down in your mind, because everyone needs to think about this. Number one, how many people in here can tell me how much they spend a week on groceries? How much do you spend?
We spend anywhere between 60 and 100.
60 and 100. And how many is that feeding?
3.
3. You do really well.
Yes. I was unemployed for years. I never learned.
So you know.
Yes. I know how to do it.
Anybody else want to volunteer that kind of information? I know a single man that spends about, and he has it down to the dollar, $48 a week. $48 a week. He carries his grocery list on his iPhone. And he goes in, and to say he's rote would not be an exaggeration. And he goes in and buys the same thing every week. And he's a very disciplined person. Now, I also know people, does anyone know a couple, no kids, that can spend $250 on groceries? Yeah. How do you spend $250 on groceries? Now, if you can afford it, now I'm not talking about eating out, I'm talking about groceries. If you can afford it, that's okay. But you know, you and your spouse need to sit down and write that down. This is what we agree we're going to do. Because you know what happens a lot of times? Because I hear it sitting in my conference room. Well, I know you spend that much on groceries, but did I ever tell you that I agreed with that? Boy, immediately I think, oh man, here we go again.
Do you have a counselor on staff?
Huh?
Do you have a counselor on staff?
Yeah, me. But I've learned to just be quiet. You know, I'm not going to dig into that fire. You know, the other food, how about entertainment? How about electricity? How about other utilities? And what happened last winter when everybody's heat bill went up anywhere from 30 to 100%? Did that change your spending skills? Or did the credit card come out? Those are the things that I worry about. Those are the things that my clients have learned. A lot of my clients have learned they need to think about that. I mean, that really is it's a big deal. So if you can sit down and identify your utilities, your entertainment, there's that entertainment again, internet and cable. Does anybody in here spend over $100 for television a month? It's easy, isn't it? You probably have internet on it though too, don't you?
Yeah.
So that sort of justifies it all, right?
Yeah.
And we're on the lower channel thing, right?
That I don't know. I just know it's $150 a month.
Yeah. And you know, because I have daughters, and my daughters are all married to these very smart men, probably smarter than I am, but they figured out how you get your internet, and you get Hulu, whatever that is, and you get Netflix, and you get all of that. And then I ask them when I visit them and I see all this stuff coming up on the screen, which I wouldn't even know how to get there, why do you even have cable? Well, it gives me the internet. Okay. Isn't that amazing? If you tell me your budget item is $100 for internet, don't tell me that you need to go to the theater. I mean, if you come into me and you say, boy, we're having a hard time making ends meet, and I see $100 or $150 going for television and internet, and then I see, oh, entertainment. Well, what entertainment's that? Well, that's going out. You know, you got to go to the theater, don't you? What's it cost when you go to the theater? Oh, $30, $35. I said, man, that's why I quit going maybe. I don't go to theaters because that popcorn's not good for you. That's what I've read anyways. But you know, as you do this though, what I'm trying to hope to get you to see today, start writing down what you spend. And at the end of the week, and I mean every week, sit down and write that out. I know everyone in here, even I know how to spreadsheet. Okay? So spreadsheet that stuff. Start to find out what your trends are. Find out where you are putting that stuff. And then if you're having a hard time making ends meet, start to figure out what you can cut. But why don't we add something to that? Like number one, let's take at the very top of that budget, put 10% of my income in. What would that be for? Tithe. Someone says, what good's tithe going to do for me? What good does it do for you? Come on. Doesn't it fulfill your thankfulness, the contract that you have with God to tithe 10% of your earnings? People say, yeah, but is that going to get me more money? I don't know that you can describe all that tithe can do for you. But I'll tell you something, if you get used to doing the tithe, you don't even miss it. And the clients I have that tithe, they don't even think about it. What's the other thing that we teach people to do? Take another 10% and put it into retirement. Not just savings, retirement. You know, when someone comes into me and they're 58 years old and they say, I'm ready to retire. I think I got to start thinking about it because I'm going to retire at 65. Well, how much retirement money have you saved? Well, I haven't saved any. I got to start doing that now. Good luck. Can you live on Social Security? So you real young people, man, if you could tithe 10 and retire 10, and then start to talk about savings. And you start to say, Paul, you're starting to mess with my cable. You're starting to mess with my movies. You're starting to mess with those extra things I like to buy with my groceries. Or you're starting to mess with my new van that I bought that gets 17 miles to a gallon. You know, these are, and you know, I'm trying to make this, I'm trying to keep this light, but I probably have touched a few people in this room. And it is, but you know something? You learn, I mean, once you do that for about a month, once you try that for a month, it isn't hard. It is not difficult at all. And I know in here we have this quick start budget, and I think it gives you a really good outline of where you could start to do this. And that emergency fund is more important than you think too. And how much does an emergency fund need to be? Everyone will debate that, but I would say probably $1,000. And it could be more. You're supposed to be able, the life insurance industry says, oh, you need at least 3 months of expenses. That's a pretty big emergency. But if you can save 3 months of expenses, more power to you. That's good. You get down into that housing and you look at first mortgage or rent or second mortgage or real estate taxes. Before you go buy that house, you should know what all that stuff is. And people get in trouble going overboard on that. If they would come in and talk to someone like me or anyone in my office, we'll ask you those hard questions right back. We're not timid. We'll say, well, why are you moving into that neighborhood? What's neighborhood got to do with it? Price has a lot to do with it. Price. And so all we really teach in our office is common sense. It's just common sense. There isn't any magic in it. Your utilities. Do we handle debt consolidation or student loans? Well, I'll tell you what we do is we help people figure them out. We don't loan money. We don't do any of that, but we help them figure it out. We help them set up a budget. And I've got a gal that works with me. Her name's Jane Shoemaker. And I think, and I don't ask her this, but I think somewhere back in her past, she was in this situation. Because, boy, she has it down cold. And what she would do is she would take all those credit cards or all that debt and she would line it out. She will look at which one has the highest interest. Those we're going to attack first. We'll pay the minimums on everything else. As we get that one done, you don't get to spend more money. We're going to take the money you were paying on that one and move it to the next one, and move it to the next one. And you know what we do in our office? And it's a blast to do it. When someone hits one of those milestones, in other words, we kill 20% of that debt, we go down to Deitch's. We get a quart of ice cream and we bring it back, so when they're coming in, we're sitting around a conference table celebrating success. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I do not like my current banker. You know how many times I hear that? A lot. Refinancing a home today is so difficult compared to 5 years ago. And the reason is, and boy, I used to be a banker, and this is one of the things that really drove me away from that industry. It used to be when you went to buy a house, and anyone in here that hasn't seen this, believe me, it's true. You say, the banker says, how much do you want? I need $110,000. So they call the appraiser. They say, we need an appraisal on the house. And the appraiser says, how much do you need it to appraise for? Oh, boy. When I was a banker and the appraiser would ask me that, I would hang up. I don't want you. I want to know what the house is worth. So then what banks started to do back in 2007, well, it goes back further than that. It goes back to the Frank Dodd bill after the Glass-Steagall Act went away, and that's when I got out of banking in 1997. Then, all at once, the barriers were turned down and banks are allowed to securitize everything. So all at once your credit cards are sold as investments. Your car loans are sold as investments. Your mortgage loans are sold as investments. They're not going to buy your deposits anymore. That's why you don't see CDs paying 5 and 6%. And you won't see that. But getting back to what happened then is the loan officer, who was never allowed to get commissions All at once, they're allowed to have commissions because we're in the security industry. Okay? So now you go buy your house and they say, yeah, okay, this was in '07. About 3 months later, that banker will call you up and say, you know, I remember you had some car loans on your application. Why don't we just roll those into this mortgage, and then you can deduct all the interest, you know, and all of that. I mean, they'd really dress it up, and you'd say, well, that's a no-brainer, and you'd run in there, and they'd call the appraiser, and they'd say, we need to get this reappraised. And they'd say, well, how much do you need to appraise for? Well, enough to cover this new debt. Oh, boy. So then when the whole thing blew up in '08, when people said, we're going to walk away from that loan, I said, that's criminal. You can't walk away from that loan. You can't walk away from any of that additional debt because it's not ethical. That's why we're where we're at today. So now when you go to refinance a house, and that's why I went into that big spiel, so you'd understand this. A bank has no control over who's going to do the appraisal. And the appraiser, for the first time, has liability. Oh, they never had any liability before. So now the bank picks up the phone, they call an 800 number. Give them the address, and there's some place somewhere, I think it's in Indiana, that says, okay, we'll hone into this group of 100 appraisers within 75 miles of that residence, and then we'll choose them. So you have no clue who's coming in and appraise your house. The whole process takes 2 months. So when you're refinancing your house, it takes about 2 months. It's good to shop around. Make sure you have all your finances in order. Make sure you don't have anything bad on your credit report. You can now get a free credit report in several places, so know what that number is. I would go to credit unions. Credit unions are sort of filling in the gap that banks have left behind. They're going to be friendlier to you. Banks, you know, banks will do it too. Don't count them out. I've got about 4 people I send people to that do that work, and I know they do it very ethically and they do it very quickly, and their rates are very good. But your credit report's going to have a lot to do with it and what you owe on the house. You can't borrow more than 80% of its appraised value anymore. Not unless you have a lot of really good credit. Then you can pay PMI insurance, and then it's no longer a good deal for you. Any other questions? Thanks. I think I talked too long, didn't I?
We went a little over, but
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
All right.
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, thank you.